The aces and eights in Impact Wrestling. What is going on with the aces and eights in Impact Wrestling? I get a lot of requests. What's going on with the aces and eights? Do you know if the aces and eights are coming back? Are there plans for the aces and eights to return? Did those teases in the summer mean anything about the aces and eights returning? What is the latest about all of that? And I think, to be honest, is probably, unless they do return and unless the faction does indeed return to Impact Wrestling, this is probably the last video I do on the aces and eights and the speculation if they return, unless, as I mentioned, unless they do return or we have future teases. This is probably the last video I do on the faction and the potential of them returning to Impact Wrestling in the near future, because I think at this point, I think we really know the circumstances and what the purpose was of those teasers of the aces and eights back in the summer. And now that we're in about halfway through September and we're on the road to Bound for Glory and we've had a couple of events since Slammiversary, it seems like we finally got our answer when it comes to aces and eights. Now, back in the summer, prior to Slammiversary, so in sort of June, early July, maybe even earlier than that, sort of May, there were a few teasers on Impact Wrestling that the aces and eights were indeed going to be returning to the company soon. We had that segment on an episode of Impact Wrestling whereby D'Lo Brown's there. He's an agent for Impact Wrestling, a producer. He's there tapping away on his laptop, on his computer. Then you have Reno Scum come in and they mock him and they say, "Who are you? You used to be somebody. You used to be the vice president of the aces and eights back in the day. You used to be this big deal, and look at you now. You're just a computer geek, a computer nerd. You're just office. You're nobody now. You're a corporate stooge." And then that left D'Lo Brown to sit on that for a while and think about what that was said and what was said. And then we go to the end of the show and they did a bit of a cold closing of the show, really. And it had D'Lo Brown on the phone to a mysterious person and say, I don't want to take that. I am more than just a corporate stooge. I'm more than a computer geek. I want to get the band back together, he said. He stands up, and then you see on his chair, you see the aces and eights cut. And it sent social media and it sent fans of Impact Wrestling and just professional wrestling fans in general, to be honest, into a bit of a meltdown. Everyone went, whoa, the aces and eights are coming back. And then subsequently, you had teases. That was the only real outright tease, I would say, of aces and eights on Impact Wrestling. But on social media, it was there. You had, obviously, as I mentioned, the D'Lo Brown tease. We knew at that point, before they'd even made their debuts, that Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows were coming in to Impact Wrestling. And we obviously know that Luke Gallows was, or Doc Gallows was an original member of the Aces and Eights. Actually, he was the first wrestler to be unmasked as a member of the Aces and Eights back in, when was that, 2012, something like that. So people thought, okay, D'Lo Brown's teasing the Aces and Eights coming back. Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson are coming in. Carl Anderson obviously wasn't never a member of the Aces and Eights because he never was in Impact Wrestling before, but he obviously had a lot of past with the Bullet Club in New Japan. At one point, he was the leader. I think a lot of people forget that about Carl Anderson, that during that AJ Styles period, so after Prince Devitt had left and become Finn Balor in WWE, they needed a new leader. And I think a lot of people just assume that AJ Styles, because he was the centerpiece of that faction after Finn Balor, that AJ Styles was the default leader of that faction. And you ask him, you ask anyone from that period of time, it wasn't. AJ Styles was never, ever the leader of that faction. It was Carl Anderson. So with that in mind, people thought, okay, Doc Gallows used to be a member. You've got D'Lo Brown teasing it. Carl Anderson was a leader of a faction that was very similar to the Aces and Eights. There has been some discussion, there wouldn't even be a Bullet Club without the Aces and Eights. We'll leave that argument there because that upsets quite a few people. But given that, people went, okay, there might be something to this. There might be something here. And then you got the news of Bully Ray's contract expired with Ring of Honor. Obviously, there's nobody more synonymous with the Aces and Eights than Bully Ray himself. Bully Ray was the president of the Aces and Eights. He was the reason for the faction. The faction was built around him. They pretty much spent a year building that Aces and Eights storyline to the eventual reveal that Bully Ray was the president, and that led to Bully Ray becoming the TNA World Heavyweight Champion for the first time in his career. Arguably the biggest moment, and probably the biggest moment of his singles career, and he got in great shape at that period of time. And regardless of some of the political Game of Thrones madness that was going on backstage at the time of Impact Wrestling, and them hemorrhaging money and going on the road and trying to go live and all that kind of rubbish, people do look back, I think, fondly on the Aces and Eights, and that proof was by the demand that was there. Every time the Aces and Eights were mentioned on TV, Every time there was an Aces and Eights tease on social media, anytime anything like that came up, people loved it. And I did get I would say maybe a bit of a mixed response. I would say largely people were excited that this group was coming back because people did have good memories of it. I think the biggest problem with Aces and Eights back in 2012 and 2013 is they were booked horribly. For a big faction and for a faction that was meant to be taken over and dominating the promotion, they lost so many big matches, and I think that's why people look back on it and say, well, they never were that good. They never drew. I had one comment say before that they were the Aces and point eights because they could never draw. They never, Impact at the time didn't draw big ratings. It's like, well, looking back on it at the time, Impact drew like between, I want to say like 1.2 or 1.5 million viewers. Now, obviously, I know that's like 8 years ago at this point, but if AEW Dynamite drew 1.5 million viewers, people would go insane. So let's not overlook that, right? That was a big deal then, and it's a big deal now. Maybe back then, Impact might have been disappointed, but Impact regularly would get 1.5 million viewers on Spike TV. So I don't think the argument is there that the Aces and Eights never drew and all that sort of stuff. I think, in my opinion, I loved the idea of the Aces and Eights. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was an interesting angle. I think everyone likes dominant factions. Everyone likes... And the way that obviously it was set up at the start is that you didn't know who they were. It was like 2012 Retribution, right? They were this invading biker gang under masks that eventually one by one got revealed. And I think people enjoyed that. What hurt them is that they were booked poorly. But the concept of the angle was very, very good, in my opinion. It was just, like I said, they were booked poorly. They didn't win big matches, but the idea of it, this cool biker gang invading a promotion, I thought was a lot of fun. And people said as well, oh, it's just a rip-off. It's a rip-off of Sons of Anarchy. Well, yeah, but that's how pro wrestling works, right? That's how pro wrestling has always worked. How many gimmicks in pro wrestling are rip-offs of anything? Sting, the Crow Sting, it's a rip-off of the film The Crow. Like, there's so much stuff that's borrowed from movies and from TV. That's where they get this stuff from. It's creative license. Pro wrestling is built on that. So that whole deal is just, ridiculous. Chris Jericho, that 2008 suit guy, he said that he based that off of the No Country for Dead Man, the villain in that. And that's just anything. That's how anything works. That's how film works. That's how TV works. It's just it's stealing with creativity is what it is. It's creative license, and people twist and change things. So I never had a problem with them going, oh, they're just doing Sons of Anarchy in pro wrestling. And what's the problem? What's the problem? So my point being, my long point there is that people were excited to see Aces and Eights return to Impact, and they were teasing it. And obviously we knew, because side by side with these Aces and Eights teas were the teases for Slammiversary at the time of new people are coming to Impact Wrestling at Slammiversary, and old favourites are returning, world champions are returning. So people thought, great, that means the Aces and Eights, because the Aces and Eights did include a couple of TNA World Heavyweight Champions, former TNA World Heavyweight Champions in Bully Ray and Mr. Anderson. So people thought, this is great. We're going to get Aces and Eights back on the screen. This is going to be interesting. I think in 2020 Impact Wrestling, this could be a lot of fun. And then nothing happened. Nothing happened. We waited at Slammiversary, and I think a lot of people, myself included, were waiting for all of these returns and debuts, and Impact Wrestling absolutely delivered. Don't get me wrong, they absolutely delivered. You got the likes of Eric Young returning to the company, and how great has Eric Young been? I mean, he's the top guy in the company right now, the top heel in the company. He's basically, his work has been so good that they've had to switch plans and put the world title on him, and now he's the main event of Bound for Glory against Rich Swann. That's how good that angle has been. You obviously had Gallows and Anderson sign with the company. You had EC3 return at the event. You had Heath make his debut of Impact Wrestling. You had the Motor City Machine Guns return. All of this was fantastic. But I think a lot of people were waiting, okay, when's this Aces and Eights thing going to happen? And nothing happened. Support for Wrestle News 365 is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Now, Manscaped, for all of my UK fans out there, Manscaped just launched in the UK. Over here in the United Kingdom, we have gone for years and years and years without using the right tools for the job. But now you can be one of the first men in England to experience their life-changing product. But it's not just limited to all of the great fans over here in the UK. This offer goes worldwide, so all of my friends over in America and around the world that are listening to this offer still does apply for you. You can still use our code. But I've got to tell you a quick story first. Now, there have been so many times, right? I'm a guy. You gotta groom down there, fellas, right? That's the most important thing. You gotta keep yourself trimmed. You gotta keep yourself proper. And a lot of the time, I've been guilty of this, of using the wrong tools for the job. I've had incidences, I'm not afraid to say it, where things have been nicked, snagged, or in fact cut down there because I wasn't being careful enough and using the right equipment. Now that just shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. You don't want to be worrying about cutting yourself down there. Do you know how painful that is? I can tell you, it hurts quite a lot. And I wish and hope to God it never happens to me again, and it won't happen to me ever again because I'm using Manscaped products. That's why Manscaped has redesigned the electric trimmer. The Manscaped engineering team has perfected the greatest ball hair trimmer ever created. Big statement, but it's absolutely true. They have just released the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0 in the UK. It's also available around the world as well. Their third generation trimmer features a cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. So those cuts and snags that I was telling you about before are a thing of the past. And let me tell you, when I tell you this is premium, I mean premium. The battery will last up to 90 minutes so you can get a longer, perfect shave. And not only that, you don't want to be cutting yourself and trimming yourself all over the bathroom, getting hair all over the place. That's just disgusting. The lawnmower has a waterproof technology that allows you to groom in the shower, so no more mess. And one of the coolest features, one of my favorite features about the lawnmower is the LED light which illuminates grooming areas for a closer and more precise trimming experience. So you can shave longer, you can shave more precisely, and you can shave in the shower. What more did I need to tell you? They've also upgraded to a 7,000 RPM motor with quiet stroke technology, and let's not forget about the charging stand. You can show off your mower loud and proud because this intelligently designed stand is a convenient charging dock powered by USB. So, if you are listening to me speak right now, I want you to experience it firsthand for yourself. Let's get that bush to tush clean, and you can get 20% off and free shipping. Yeah, you heard me right there. 20% off and free shipping. All you have to do is use the code 365wrestle at manscaped.com. Make your testies their besties. That's 20% off and free shipping. Not only are you getting 20% off, you're getting free shipping as well with the code 365wrestle at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the code 365wrestle. Your balls will thank you. And then people thought, well, okay, Aces and Eights is a big deal. They're a big faction. Maybe they're not the type of group that they can't just show up and get lost, right? They can't just get lost. So there was a lot happening at Slammiversary. Maybe it'll happen on the post-Slammiversary episode of Impact Wrestling. That didn't happen. And then you had Impact Emergence, the 2-week event on Access TV. And again, there was a lot of speculation. Okay, maybe this is the time. It's a TV special. The ratings have been up recently. You've had your best months on social media that they had for July, especially Impact. They did the biggest numbers on YouTube that they'd ever done, more subscribers to Impact Plus, best numbers on Twitter and Instagram and all of that sort of stuff. And the ratings were going up too on Access TV. Everyone was very happy. So there was speculation. Okay, Impact Emergence, they're going to want to pop a big number. You bring back the Aces and Eights on there. It makes a lot of sense. Again, it didn't happen. Now, that's not to say that Impact Emergence were not good shows, because they really were. And looking back on it, did they need the Aces and Eights to return on there? No, they were fine as they were. So then, recently, I would say recently, over the last month or so, 6 weeks, there has basically been discussion that the teases when it comes to Aces and Eights were just red herrings. They were just red herrings, and basically Aces and Eights were never ever going to return. It was never part of the plan to have Aces and Eights return at Slammiversary or return at Impact Emergence or anything like that. They were basically thrown in with the likes of Super Eric. You remember there was some Super Eric vignettes that happened on Impact Wrestling, where you had the superhero grab the suit and the cape, and one time you had Johnny Swinger walking around backstage, and he picks up he's trying to find a disguise. He finds the suicide costume, but then he also finds the Super Eric costume. Go, what the hell is this? Throws that to the side. All of those things were red herrings. And the reason that Impact did them was to get people talking and get people questioning, are the Aces and Eights going to return? Are they going to show up at Slammiversary? And let's face it, as a tactic, as a tactic and as a ploy to get people talking about the product and get people discussing if Aces and Eights were going to return, and to get people to watch Bound for Glory Slammiversary rather, and purchase it and watch it. It absolutely worked, because Slammiversary was a huge success, arguably Impact's biggest pay-per-view that they've done in a very, very long time. The show was trending worldwide. It was trending #1 in the United States, and that hasn't happened for Impact Wrestling in just forever. Absolutely forever. So it worked. As a tactic, it worked. I do have my criticisms of that, in that I always have a bad taste in my mouth for any promotion or any TV program where you've hinted at something and you don't follow through on it. And I understand the purpose of red herrings. I understand the purpose of them, that they're meant to throw people off. They're meant to make you look in a different direction, so that when something else happens in the opposite direction, you go, oh, I never saw that coming. The problem is that this was a red herring that was meant to throw you off, but nothing happened in the opposite direction that kind of countered it. Super Eric, right, that red herring was meant to make you think, okay, Eric Young's coming back, but he's coming back as Super Eric. Eric Young did return, but he's this completely different character. He's the world-class maniac, and his work has been phenomenal, and he's now the world champion. Aces and Eights was a red herring, but what have they delivered on the other side of it? Nothing. They haven't delivered anything on the other side of it. And there was legitimate reasoning on top of the teases that we thought, well, Aces and Eights are going to happen, because they'd booked Aces and Eights for the cancelled show that Impact or TNA There's No Place Like Home event. That was going to happen in April. That pay-per-view was going to happen during WrestleMania weekend in April in Florida, and you were going to have basically a TNA throwback show, and a lot of things that were scheduled for that show ended up happening. So Moose was scheduled to win a King of the Mountain ladder match to become the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Eventually that happened. We didn't have the ladder match, but Moose became the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. On that show, we were going to have a surprise return of the Motor City Machine Guns. Obviously the show didn't happen, but the Motor City Machine Guns returned instead at Slammiversary. They're now the Impact World Tag Team Champions. On that show, D'Lo Brown and Mr. Anderson were booked to reunite as the Aces and Eights, the two former vice presidents of the faction. But it never happened in Impact. So once again, there was legitimate reasoning for this speculation, but for whatever reason, it never happened, and it was a red herring. And I think at this point, as I mentioned, this is probably the last video that I do on it, because at this point, so much time has passed now that it's just not going to happen. I just don't think it's going to happen. And I know some of the comments might say, what about Bound for Glory? And look, I mean, anything could happen at Bound for Glory. I just think at this point, they haven't teased it in months. There has been zero speculation on it now for a while. There has been, as I said, no teases. There's been no social media posts, no D'Lo Brown on Impact Wrestling, no Gallows and Anderson teasing it and anything like that. So I think it's very, very unlikely. And I did a video about Bully Ray the other day. I did a video about Bully Ray. Could he return to Impact Wrestling? And I do still think that's a possibility. As far as we're aware at this point, Bully Ray hasn't signed a new contract with Ring of Honor. He absolutely could. His contract, when it expired with Ring of Honor, the only reason he wasn't offered a new deal was purely because at the time, because of the pandemic, because of COVID-19, they weren't offering new deals, and they weren't running shows at the time that his contract expired. Now that's changed since then. Ring of Honor are running show now. They did the TV tapings a couple of weeks ago. I think they've even started to air now, and they're doing the ROH Pure tournament as part of those TV tapings. So we know that EC3 is a part of those TV tapings. He's not a part of the Pure Championship tournament. So Bully Ray absolutely could have signed a new contract and could appear with Ring of Honor anytime in these TV tapings. We just don't know yet. So that's a possibility. So I think if Bully Ray's not a part of it, do you even bother to do the Aces and Eights? Probably not. Probably not. So I still do think it's possible that Bully Ray can come into Impact. Absolutely. And he's got connections there. As I mentioned in the previous video that we did, Tommy Dreamer is quite a big figure in Impact at this point. Not really on screen. He does the occasional match, but he's a big deal in terms of being a producer backstage and agent. He was a big driving force of the Wrestle House segments. And obviously, Bully and Dreamer go way back. They're massive, massive friends. They sometimes work with each other on Busted Open Radio on Sirius XM. So that, to me, lends the possibility of, yeah, Bully Ray could come back to Impact, but he's also very well liked in Ring of Honor, and maybe he always had an agreement with them of, once we can offer you a deal again, we'll offer you one. So I just think at this point, at this stage, as I mentioned, there have been no teases for a long time. There's been no discussions for a long time. I just think it's unlikely. And even if Bully Ray came back in, I think he would just be Bully Ray. I don't think he would do the whole aces and eights deal. He's not one, Bully Ray, for looking back in the past too much. He doesn't like to do that. He always likes to do what's next. He was one of those people that said, like when TNA did the ECW reunion shows in 2010, that Hardcore Justice, he didn't want to do it. He said, that's past, that's in, I don't want to be repeating things and all that. And that's why he broke up with Devon originally in Impact Wrestling, because he wanted to do something new. They both did. And the reason they went back to WWE and did the Dudley Boys is because they wanted to end their career as the Dudley Boys in WWE, but Bully didn't want to retire, Devon did. So I just don't think at this point that it's going to happen. And as I mentioned, Bound for Glory, I know some people will say, well, it's possible Bound for Glory. Look, anything's possible, but I think you look at that show, you look at that card, unless the reason that we've heard nothing is to really throw people off the scent. We got you thinking it was going to happen at Slammiversary, then we just completely pulled any teases and caught you off guard by surprise at Bound for Glory. Maybe, but I think that's very, very unlikely. So I think it's dead at this point. I think it was a red herring, and as I mentioned earlier on in the video, that kind of doesn't sit well with me, not because, you've been duped so you don't like it, and you don't like being fooled, or you don't like being worked. No, I just think I don't have a problem with being worked at all. If anything, it's great, but I just think I don't have a problem being worked as long as there's a payoff somewhere where something else comes in instead. To be teased that something is going to happen and then nothing happen in opposition of it just doesn't sit right for me. That doesn't sit right for me to sell a pay-per-view on, this could happen, it doesn't happen, but then nothing that is comparable to it kind of happens. You know what I mean? I think that's why that kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But as I mentioned, unless we get any more teases and unless they do show up at Bound for Glory, which I think has like a 99% chance of not happening at this point, we probably won't be speaking about aces and eights again. But it was fun to reminisce and it was fun to speculate. But I think the aces and eights returning to Impact Wrestling is not happening now. And like I said, unless something big happens, we won't be talking about it again. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts? Are the aces and eights dead when it comes to Impact Wrestling? Is the red herring deal over? Were they just teases and we're never going to see it again? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button as well. Really just help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. We're closing in on 900 subscribers on that long road to 1,000, so if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It would mean a lot. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.